On this episode of the Mad Rush podcast.
We live in a climate in which people are very careful, right? And we should be. We want to be inclusive. We want to be welcoming to everyone, as we should be. But I think people, you can either take that too far, right? And erase it, or we have folks who need a little filter, right? Like I said, get them interested, or give just enough of yourself, or present just enough of your zany personality to make them engage with you so that they can learn more. So if you have someone in your life that you love and you know that they're about to interview or do something big, help them hear, help them be aware.
Welcome to the Mad Rush podcast. I'm Trisha Addix, the original sorority rush consultant. While the stories I have to share are nothing short of astonishing, this podcast goes beyond the wild client tales and sorority life. I'll be engaging with fascinating guests from both within and outside the Greek world, uncovering the surprising connections that bind us all together. Join me for a journey that's as entertaining as it is enlightening. Welcome to Mad Rush. I don't know if I should give a parental control alert for this episode of Mad Rush for the stories alone, but we're going to try to keep it within the rails. My guest today, Mel Hunkapiller, Melanie Hunkapiller, has some great advice too. So just expect that you may be cringing a little while you listen, hopefully not. If you were or are a client of It's All Greek to Me, chances are you have seen and remembered clearly Mel's name on some correspondence. Mel's last name, like I said, is Hunkapiller. And I was maid of honor or matron of honor in her wedding. And when I went to buy her wedding gift, and I told the lady at the store, I was trying to get it off the registry so somebody else wouldn't buy it. And I said, it's the Hunkapiller registry. And the woman was like, I hope he's hot. That name.
It was, he sure better be hot.
Exactly.
That was it.
Anyway, Mel has been helping me since the inception of my company. And we've been dear friends since 1988. And she has been steadfastly supporting me in life and in business for that long too. Welcome, Mel. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's odd for me to be on, I feel like, the main stage with you. Normally much better at the support role.
Yes. Well, you're very good at that role too.
Yes. And thank you for having me. And just to give a little introduction, I, by career, am a corporate recruiter, and I've been a recruiting consultant for many, many years. And I'm sorry, I call you T-Bird. I can't call you Trisha. She's T-Bird to me. Always has been.
It's funny that you say that. I'm interrupting you, but I was on a Zoom with one of my college roommates, Jill, and it was with people we didn't know today. And I called Jill Squirt. And the people that were on the Zoom with us, I kept trying to say Jill and I couldn't do it. I was like, they were like, who is Squirt? I was like, that's just what I call her and I can't stop. So yeah, I get that I don't think you've ever called me Trisha. That came.
So I'll try, but if not, she's T-Bird. I'm not just talking to myself on a podcast. But we get into so many different interesting conversations. I recruit people for corporate life, but I also do a lot of career counseling within there, whether they're internal, external. I help my son's school when they have interview junior series where I go in and I help them come up with their story. It could be their resume. It could be whatever it is to help them, whether it's an internship or college. And really, most of my world is in the corporate arena, but it's all the same thing. And T-Bird and I talk about this all the time. There are just some basic truths, if you will, that have to be met. And I'm going to jump in with one of those, but I think we do best when we're just chit-chatting. She's always walking and I never am. And that is her favorite thing. That's her. I think she thinks she could solve my entire life if I would just go on a blippy blip blip blick and walk.
Exactly. So what she's saying is we talk every single day and we solve all the world's problems. And we were talking about, in particular, this podcast. We were thinking about how the synergy between what Melanie does and what we do, it's there. And it's really, we started off talking about how we were going to tell you guys what to do in an interview and in Rush, and it kind of morphed from there. So that's why we're here today.
And it really came from a conversation, I think, last week. And I was sharing a story with T-Bird, and she's like, oh my gosh, I have the exact same one. And one of the basic tenets of what Trisha does, Trisha, and what I do is we truly can tailor anything, and we can help anyone really sort of change their mindset and help them get comfortable, right? And help them really hit that sweet spot. If it's a job, if it's an interview, if it's an internship, if it's Rush. But if people can't really hear our advice, or if they're not open to it, or if they just can't hear it for whatever, we have to meet people where they are, and that's wonderful. And I think I do it great on my playing field, and T-Bird's a master of it. But let's talk about that, because honestly, I have parents and I have friends who are like, oh my gosh, you have to talk to my husband. Or you need to talk to my wife because they have this interview, and boy, they haven't interviewed in however many years. But if that person really doesn't want to talk to me, or doesn't really know who I am or what I do, it's not going to connect. And I'm really not going to be able to help them be their best if for many things, if there's no self-awareness, if they really, their loved one is very interested in my help, but perhaps they're not.
Yeah, I get that a lot. We talked about that too. If someone hires me or hires It's All Greek to me, if it's the grandmother or the mom, or rarely, but sometimes the dad, if they're the ones who want help preparing their daughter, granddaughter, whatever, for Rush, whomever, then, and the person who we're supposed to be working with is not into it, then that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it goes really wrong really quickly. No matter how much finesse we can add. And
okay, I got to interrupt you. Is that your dog snoring next to you?
It is her snoring. Do you want me to?
No, it's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's. I think with Zoom and COVID was the beginning of that. You would see a news anchor and a cat would walk across their desk or whatever. I think now it's completely different now than it used to be. Now it's just like, oh yeah, there's my cat, there's my dog, there's my screaming kid, whatever. It doesn't matter.
She's 9 years old, right? And a Saint Bernard. So she always finds me. And if I locked her out of the office, she would be scratching at the door, which would be a lot more disruptive.
That would be even more annoying. Well, so let's back up. Let's talk about what you do, just so people understand where this is coming from. This advice / talk about technically what you do and how long you've been doing it, that kind of stuff. So they understand that this advice, this conversation, there's a reason for it. You're just not a random friend of mine from growing up or from college.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been recruiting since 1997. And
what is recruiting?
Recruiting. So I help businesses, and I've done consulting, but I also work directly for them in hiring the people in our company. So I work with the heads of the departments or our company or organization. We put a plan together, and then we hire all of those different roles. And what I found to be really interesting is that whether they're internal, like our internal employees, I'll even talk with them, or external employees. Some people are such phenomenal fits, and it could be the same for Rush. They are amazing natural fits. But if they can't learn to connect some of the dots going in, they have to help the interviewer or the people who are meeting them really connect the dots and ensure that they're the right person. So in my job where I hire people for a living, I've become, we call it bartender. You can call it friend. I know. I do. I feel
Bartender.
like more of a bartender. So I work with the hiring leaders and I work with the people who are looking for jobs. And to me, it's one of the most exciting parts of my job every day and what keeps it creative and what makes it kind of feed your soul to really help people on that journey. Because we do it every day, it's very easy for us to say, oh, you go in, you do this, you can just ask them for a blueprint of the job of what they're looking for. But it's not common sense. And it is once you flip that part of someone's brain into what they're doing, sort of like with you helping someone for Rush. Once you can help sort of focus and reposition how they're presenting themselves, they might be a phenomenal fit. But if you can't get past a certain things, they'll never be seen or heard.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I love that word focus. So what we're trying to do, what Mel tries to do with her candidates, if I'm hearing you correctly, is focus their preparation and get them to show their best selves and be able to block out the noise so that they can find out whether or not a place is a good fit for them. Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say. And I will say, I think what we both see a lot of, I mean, and again, we talk about it often, there can be a really big disconnect. There is sort of the world today is much more casual and informal than it was, say, when I was going on a job interview.
Well, it's exactly what we were just saying. It's more casual. The fact that your dog is snoring so freaking loudly on this podcast, but it's okay because it's not the 80s and you're buttoned up and you're not showing your real self. You're showing the fact that you have a old, loud, big dog next to you. And that's going to exactly what you're saying. It's casual. It's more authentic. It's more real.
Yeah. And I think maybe our focus is, right, and perhaps I should have hidden my dog a little bit better, but I think we know each other so well. But right, when you're going in for Rush or you're going in the job interview or you're going in you have to dress it up a little differently. And my experience is with a lot of the young people that I help, there is a complete lack of filter altogether when they present themselves for the first time. And so helping people, and I think you do this as well, helping people to get, like, we don't want to muffle the personality because that would not work at all. It would be the death knell to any interview or any Rush. But to just filter it enough that you leave people wanting a little more and you get them curious. You want people to be interested enough to be curious without just smacking them over with so much information that people think, okay, this is odd. And this feels.
Yeah. So like, give an example. We talked about this the other day and I thought that was really, talk about what you were. Yeah. So just give an example.
All right. So I help kiddos when they are putting applications in. It could be for the Naval Academy. It could be for whatever. And I start by saying, tell me what you've done, right? So we can start. They need a story. They need a compelling reason that people want to know more and invite them back. And their story, and they had really cool internships. I'm like, well, tell me about that. Because I'm trying to get to their why. Like, I really want to know their why. Why do you want this? What makes you exceptionally experienced for this? So I start with simple questions. Amazing internships, like really unusual and very appropriate. But the reason why was a little offensive and as to why they took the whole internship. They're like, well, I saw this stuff on the news and I thought it sounded terrible. So I just wanted to see if it was really real. I'm like, wow, you can't say that, right?
Right. You can't say, and that's what I think you're trying to say here. You cannot say every thought that comes into your head. You need a little bit of a filter, which is what you do, is you help them dial it back a little bit, because there is so much now. Part of it's being PC and part of it is, explain what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying to say.
Right. We have to be, we live in a climate in which people are very careful, right? And we should be. We want to be inclusive. We want to be welcoming to everyone, as we should be. But I think people, you can either take that too far, right? And erase it, or we have folks who need a little filter, right? Like I said, get them interested, or give just enough of yourself, or present just enough of your zany personality to make them engage with you so that they can learn more. Example, I had a gentleman show up for an interview off in Atlanta, and he was dressed in board shorts, Birkenstocks, a ripped t-shirt.
Are you serious?
I'm not kidding. I had to go pick him up from the, this was for a very conservative, very large firm interview. And I looked at him and I'm like, we need to fix this. I said, they can never hear you if you walk in like this. They won't.
Yeah, I say that again for the people in the back. They can never hear you if that's immediately, that's all they're going to be thinking about is what you're wearing.
It's blinding. You will blind them to your true self if you lead with something. So, and that can be from your dress. It could be a comment you make about why you chose a specific job. So many first step bloopers that can really prohibit you from continuing in the process and actually having a chance. And I think it's always going to be the person that achieves the goal in the end. And I think T-Bird and I just get you to the point that they can hear you. They can see you. They want to know more, but you don't go in and blind them with board shorts and, a ripped t-shirt. And if you have to
and blurting out everything that, we are now so conditioned to, again, that's what I was kind of trying to say with we're conditioned to accept and try to understand what, anxiety and all of the things, but you can't lead with that. You can't lead with, hey, it's nice to meet you. I have major anxiety and this is very stressful for me. Because while it is about you, it's not
the point of the interview.
Right.
It's not the point of the party, right? Of the when you go through rush party. I have another great example. I had worked with a young person, and I mean, they totally got it. They were in the zone. They knew their why. They knew themselves. They were confident. Like, I was ready, and I called them. I said, call me after your interview. I can't wait to hear. So they called me, and I'm like, well, tell me about it. Right. Well, this is, going in, it sounds perfect. And they're like, yeah, I got a little nervous. So I told them that I took my meds right before. And so if I was a little too focused, that would be the reason why. And I'm just like,
no.
Right. And I think that if there's any way, and it could even be if you're a parent listening to this, or you yourself are wanting to go through rush or an internship interview or whatever it might be, just take a moment. And it's kind of like that. If you think you're talking too much, like if you worry about that at any point in a rush party or an interview, you are like, stop.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yes.
There are those it's intuition, and sometimes it screams at us and sometimes it doesn't, but we're here to help your best authentic self get to that next. You've got to get out of your own way. And oftentimes, so if you have someone in your life that you love and you know that they're about to interview or do something big, and you think, we're not telling you to go insult people left and right, but help them hear, help them be aware, help them with a blind spot. That's our professional jobs, are to help people with blind spots. But I think, I have a 17-year-old son, and I feel like as a mom, I sometimes get the not fun job of not the most fun messaging.
Right. And I think it's such a gift to have someone like you, or someone like the people who work through for me, you cannot hear it from your parents. And that is something that we see all the time. I can say the exact same thing as someone's parent, and they're going to hear it from me if they're willing to listen. And that is not something that you can hear from parents. So I think what we can do is let's give the listeners. So let's say that you are preparing for Rush, or you're preparing for a job interview, an internship interview. Anyway, what are some things that we see that people should avoid? Because we see this, we know this, we live it every day, and I think that avoiding some of these things will really help you block out the noise. I use this example all the time. We had a client, she wanted to wear Doc Martens in Rush because she felt like that helped her show her personal style, and it did. But I was telling her, okay, if you walk out of your dorm room and you're wearing Doc Martens and everybody else is wearing sandals or tennis shoes or whatever, then you're going to be thinking about your shoes, and you're not going to be thinking about getting to know the people in Rush. So when put that way, she was able to say, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe you can say, I like Doc Martens, but you just don't lead with that. That's not the first thing that you want people to see, because you're not going to be confident in that. And I'm kind of rambling, but I just feel like it's important for us to give some advice based on our experience and our knowledge of years and years and years of doing this.
I have another one. Yeah.
Sorry. Go for it. Yeah. Oh, I love it, because I always interrupt people. And
Here, let me be the interrupter. This is what you would not do in an interview. I would not interrupt her. I would not be rude and interrupt her. But I also feel as if you have a really, usually pretty skilled interviewer. I know as an interview style, I'm very informal because I truly want to get to know people. I mean, I really want to know what they're going to bring to the job. It is key not to get too comfortable as a rushie, as a candidate of anything, because some of the main things I've seen, again, much more informal world today, but cursing. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't say crap in an interview. You can't. You just can't do it. And for so many people these days, that's not a curse word. But in a professional interview, it's not okay. It's not okay to start laughing maniacally because you are nervous, right? You have to know your tells. You have to know what you have. Some people, they're like, well, I'm a nervous laugher, right? Like that's kind of what I do.
Well, so if you're a nervous laugher, how do you stop that?
I think if you're aware of it, you can stop it. If you're not aware, so I have some people who come and they want to spend time with them to prepare for the interview, and they start maniacally laughing at some stuff that's not super funny. And I'm like, let me guess, when you get nervous, you laugh. They're like, yeah, actually, it's been a big thing my whole life. And I'm like, well, for this focused 45-minute interview, let's practice not doing it. And I'm like, that's all I'm asking. I'm not telling you have to do it for the rest of your life. I'm not telling you that you have to dress, not wear your Daffy Duck tie and, I've seen.
Have you ever had someone who had a Daffy Duck tie?
My husband. Had a Donald Duck. We had to go to a wedding. We were dating, Bill. And we were going to a wedding. It was Michelle Miltz's wedding. And he's like, well, he said, I don't have a suit. I'm like, what do you, coat and tie, right? He's like, yeah, I have a tie. I'm like, a tie. Okay. It was summer. I'm like, let me see it. It was Donald Duck.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a conversation starter at a wedding, but
not really. Not the wedding I want to go to. I did not want that conversation. Yeah, that's a spectacle. Sorry. But yes, so I have had people, I've had people who really want a job so badly, or they want the internship so badly that they like keep it in the rails the whole time. And I had a man break into beatbox and get on his knees singing "Take a Chance on Me."
No, he didn't.
I
Are
worked
you
at
kidding
Microsoft,
me?
and that happened at Microsoft.
Oh my God. What did you do?
I wasn't in the room. I heard about it afterwards. And my first question was, did you have to call security? And he said, no. He's like, he was a really very sweet person. And he was like 6'4". He was a big dude. And he was so excited that I think he had made it through the whole interview. I'd worked with him. He's very bright, very, very, very smart, but he had some little personality. He had some nervous tics that would start coming.
Beatboxing is a little more than a nervous tick.
He saved it up. He got all the way through the interview, and then he just went for broke at the end. And it was very...
Did he get the job?
No.
Yeah.
Can't beatbox and grab someone's ankles.
No, wait, you grabbed their ankles?
Take a chance, take a chance, take a chance.
Oh my God.
I'm not kidding.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, no. That's next level.
And I think there's something not to do is to go the total opposite way. I mean, I had someone who was so focused. Interviews at Microsoft are very famous for being very long, 5 1-hour interviews in the room, one-on-one. And the gentleman was not feeling well. And he had a briefcase on the thing. And he, rather than excusing himself, he vomited into his briefcase and shut it
oh my God.
and put it to the side. And what you are doing is exactly what my hiring manager, he's like, I don't know how to tell you this.
Oh man, that's tough.
So
did he get the job? Wow. I remember one time I was working at the Athens Observer newspaper. It was summer when I was in college. And this is a completely different thing. It was just me being very awkward. The person, my boss, asked me to go, I don't know, pick up something from somewhere downtown Athens. Their office was downtown Athens, but it was pouring down rain. And I didn't have a raincoat. I didn't have an umbrella. And so I left and I went to go pick it up. And I was so proud of myself because it showed how much I wanted to like do my job. But I come back and I'm completely drenched head to toe. And rather than making me look like dedicated, the woman was like, what is wrong with you? Why didn't you just like
take a moment?
Take a moment,
go
like
to the restroom
and wait to see if the rain ends. She's like, what do you think I am? Like, that's crazy. And I was like, it backfired because I thought she's going to think, oh, wow, this is the most dedicated person to her job. Instead, she was just like, you have zero common sense. Like, you don't go out into a torrential downpour for something that, and it wasn't an emergency situation. It was like, go get yesterday's newspaper from, I don't know what it was. But that was such a big lesson for me because I wasn't using my common sense at all. Like, I'm sure that guy that threw up into his briefcase was like, oh,
they're going to see.
They're going to see that I'm, want to be here and I'm dedicated to this interview and I really want it. Instead, they're like, you are a freak that just vomited into your
Yeah, you could have just excused
briefcase.
Yourself and said,
right.
I'm sorry, give me just one moment, right?
I'm sick, yeah. And who knows? Can we reschedule?
Maybe that's our gift to the world, is giving people, just getting them to think it through to where common sense is like, hey, just take a moment, excuse yourself. It doesn't have to be awkward. Yeah. Nothing has to be awkward. In fact, I think I love, you have an example, I think, of, if you fall or you do something, right, your worst nightmare, at least in your mind, happens. And I tell people this in an interview. If you just take a moment, have a little, sense of humor about it. And
like think about in this podcast, Mary Harris, my original mentor, she was talking about, she was going through Rush and she didn't get picked up. So she was standing there in the lobby of the sorority house and no one like came to get her. And so instead of freaking out or, losing her mind, she just kind of rolled with it. But I think that's such a great point, regardless of whether use your common sense, use your, just because you're in an interview or you're in rush doesn't mean everything that you know to be true is out the window. You have to understand or like think about it a little bit.
I will actually say, from an interviewing perspective, the people who find themselves wandering off into left field, right? Or the people who mispronounce something and they catch themselves and they're like, I'm so sorry. Let me get back on track. That self-confidence,
that's a great idea, yeah.
And that unflappable, I've had people get the job because of that. So their error actually showed how they work under pressure and how they handle it. And so in the hiring manager's mind, they're like, oh my gosh. So if this goes south in a client visit or a deal, I know exactly how that person's going to behave.
Yeah, that's that's a great point.
Yeah. So
because nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to go through this. And I say that to clients all the time too. Like if you're in a rush party and something like, again, Mary Harris realized that her shirt was on inside out and backwards. Like how she handled that made people want to get to know her.
They're relatable. We've all had something like that happen to us at some point. And the fact that it not only just happened to them, but on a pretty big stage, we feel empathy as the person who's looking to give bids or offers for my point or yours. We love to pull for someone.
That reminds me, I have the craziest story about that. And about how just like kind of laughing at yourself. So a couple years ago, I had surgery, and this is TMI, but I had drains. And so I had to wear really big clothes, like sweatpants, sweatshirt. And I was supposed to get the drains out. I didn't. So I'm going to visit Charlie, my son, at Ole Miss, and I'm going to do it by damn. It doesn't matter. Like I wanted to see him. So I said to my husband, to Greg, I was like, all right, we're going to go see him. Doesn't matter what I look like. I'm just going to see him, give him a hug, lay eyes on him. So we drive to Oxford, Mississippi from Atlanta, 5-hour drive. I'm in sweatpants. My hair is greasy. I have drains, of course, no makeup. I'm wearing slippers because my, feet were swollen, whatever. So we stop at a liquor store on the way into Oxford to get some beer for, we were going to have some kids over. We stop to get some beer, and I am worried about blood clots. So I'm shuffling back and forth in front of a liquor store. I mean, picture this. Okay. I'm like hunched over. I am shuffling back and forth in front of this liquor store in Oxford, Mississippi, in basically pajamas, very big, not clean, whatever. I look up, and who is standing there? Do you have any idea?
No.
My high school boyfriend I hadn't seen in 30 years. Okay.
So I picture now homeless, an alcoholic, at a liquor store shuffling.
Right. So I have two choices at this point. I'm like, okay, I can either turn away and be like, and I kind of wanted to see him, but not in those circumstances. And I was like, I can eat, because of course he didn't recognize me. So I was like, I could either continue shuffling and he's just going to think I'm someone in front of a liquor store that,
needs a hair.
Yeah, might or might not be creepy. Or I can embrace this. So I just turned and looked at him and I was like, okay. I was like, hey, his name is Ralph. I was like, hey, Ralph, it's Trisha. And he was like, oh man, that's tough for you. And he was like, I was like, I know. I was like, anyway, my point is then we kind of laughed and we laughed and he was like, wow. He's like, if this is, this is how bad he's like, you can only go up. Anyway, I did see him later in the weekend and he was like, okay, this is a little better.
Normal.
But I was like, I can just laugh at myself because
Well,
I can't.
you have better days, right? And I think there is something about some self-confidence and some comfort in your own skin. And I think, at least for me in an interview, of course it matters what you know and all of that. But if you can be comfortable in your own skin and just confident enough to be relatable, people connect to that time and time and time and time again. And I'm sure it's the same for your young ladies going through Rush.
Yeah. I mean, and I always preach preparing is so important.
Yeah.
And preparing and showing confidence. But if something like that happens, and I don't recommend any of the above, but if something like that happens, you can either let it break you or, I mean, if he had recognized me and I had just been a puddle, he'd be like, okay. But then she's a hot mess. But I mean, I feel like if you are prepared and you're confident, then if something like that does threaten to derail you, if you don't let it derail you, it shows a little bit more about how resilient and valuable you will be.
And that's who you want to work with. That's who you want to be a sorority sister with, right? Those are the people. Those are your people. And you don't have to be a lot of alike, but the human condition is incredibly bonding. And we've all been there. And it's just in the moment. And as you said, like you had that moment and it felt like time stood still. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm either going to own this or I'm going to pretend like I didn't see him and I'm going to go the other way. And sometimes those quirky moments are defining moments, but in the best of ways. So learn to embrace those. And I that's a huge lesson. And I think that also being comfortable with yourself and knowing that you're enough, frankly, no matter what it is that you're trying to do. Like, don't slick talking, making up words.
Your brother did that. You gotta give it. So tell him about Brantley, her brother. Who's
my darling older brother, he passed away, sadly, many years ago, but was awful. And I do mean horrific. I had T-Bird on speed dial or speed text, like, oh my God, you got to hear this one. We were watching American Idol, which is kind of embarrassing in itself, but yeah.
I still love American Idol. Don't kid yourself. I love that show.
And he looks at me, but he just owns it. He's like, Mel, it's not their genre. I'm like, John, it's not their genre. I'm like, genre? Yeah. But he would literally make things up all the time. So much so that I wasn't sure. He's like, well, I'm not trying to be braggadocious. And I think braggadocious is actually a word, but in the moment, because he has slaughtered so many words and things, I just cracked up. He's like, it's a word. I'm like, no.
I feel like he was just trying to not look smart.
Yeah,
but
it's totally what it was about. I really think so.
And I feel like that was not, I mean, he was smart. He was a smart guy, but forcing it, trying to do something, trying to make yourself look smart.
Makes you look so not smart, or trying to make yourself look like a salesperson.
Right.
The best salespeople don't look and feel like salespeople. They just feel like great people that connect with you and really understand you.
When I worked at the Atlanta Journal, there was this guy, he was always on the elevator at the same time I was. And I worked there for, I don't know, years. And every time I got on the elevator, he was reading this really thick, like War and Peace, I think might have even been it. And he would just ride the elevator and he would be reading this, and then he would just make up what he was reading. And he did this for years. And the whole point was, and it was very endearing, but he also was trying to be something he wasn't. I'm not saying he wasn't smart, but he was trying to look,
Trying too hard.
trying too hard to look like a guy who reads War and Peace for, on the elevator. And it wasn't, I mean, I did get to know him and it wasn't him, but he was just trying not to be. I think the point that we're making is you got to be authentically you, and you have to embrace that. And you can't, it's sort of like what I said to my clients about these TikTok trends. Like, if you can be on trend, but if it's not you, then you're just going to look like you're trying too hard.
It's really
And
painful. And that's,
yeah,
if people come in and think, oh, a CFO is going to sound like this. Or,
right. Yeah.
Right. We're coyotes. A coyote is going to act this way, like we just saw on TikTok. That is like, I mean, it's a bomb going off. And at that point, people cease to actually see the real you, be able to hear the real you. I mean, it is not pretty, and it's awkward. And I find that when you're no longer authentic to yourself and you're not comfortable, it's an energy, no matter what room you're in. And that awkwardness that you're feeling gets amplified out tenfold. And even if people don't even know that, like, a lot of people aren't going to know that you messed up in the story you had created, or they're not going to know what it is, but they can feel it every single time. And the best.
It's like, are you about to tell the story about my book?
I love it.
So one thing that Melanie always says is have a truth sayer in your life. She is mine. But I will tell you, so I grew up, again, that's why I was working at the Atlanta Journal. It was because I wanted to be Louis Grizzard. I loved his writing. If you don't know who he is, I talked about him when
I was
Charlie English was on my podcast. I see he has a lot of commonalities in the way he writes. But anyway, Louis Grizzard had an article?
He had book.
Feature. Well, I mean, he had books, but anyway, he worked for the Atlanta Journal and he wrote an article, and it was very Southern voice, very funny. He was a big Georgia Bulldog. Anyway, I loved his writing. And so that's why I started working at the Atlanta Journal, like I said, because I thought I was going to move over into feature writing from classified advertising, which was never going to happen, but I didn't know that. And anyway, so when I started writing my book, the book that is about Rush, it's going to come out soon. And I started each chapter with, like, each chapter title had, like, what I thought was funny. And it used the word shit. And that's not how I talk. That's not authentic to me. Sure, I cuss, but, like, I don't work in the word shit. Just so it was like, get your shit together and prepare yourself.
You're being spicy. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it was not authentically me. But I was trying to basically copy Louis Grizzard. He also was not a big cusser. But what I'm saying is, I was trying to emulate this writing that I thought would be well received, and
you admired. You admire it. Yeah.
And so I would send to you, like, these chapters for you to look at, and you're like, wait, that doesn't sound like you at all. And it was because I was trying to copy Louis Grizzard, and or that style. And that is not me. I'm very much more, I mean, sure, like I said, I do cuss, but I don't lead with that.
Seriously, one of the funniest people I know. I mean, we laugh all the time. And you're naturally that way. So when I read this, I'm like, oh, harsh. And not right. It just wasn't authentic. So I'm like, I'm going to give you some feedback.
Right. And that's the thing. And that goes back to listening too. Like what we were talking about. And I know Collier, my producer, is going to kick my butt because I've said 1,000 times, and he's going to have to cut them out as much as he can. I'm trying very hard. It's not, Anyway, I apologize, Collier, for when you edit this, that you're going to have to cut out all my ums. But I digress. It's just, you have to listen to the people that you trust. And in our case, that is, us. If you hire, well, no, I'm talking about if you hire someone to help you prepare for a rush, in my case, then listen to us and trust that we're telling you the truth. And it's the same way with me and you. I trust that you're going to tell me the truth and vice versa. But you have to be open to it and you have to listen. And that goes back to the grandmother or the mom hiring us. And you don't trust that we know more than you do,
and that we want your highest good. I think that's that. We're pulling for you more than anyone.
Just like you're pulling for me more than anybody. You want my book to be authentically me. And then, because it does. I mean, it has
that's what's your special sauce is you. And so I at first you're like, oh, it could be a business model. And I'm like, yeah, the secret sauce is you.
Right.
It's your ability to read people. It's your goodness and wanting the best for that person. And you are very good about not layering on what you want for that person. You really can get to it quickly, what is best and how that person can best represent themselves so that they find their home. And that's my desire, is that someone can bottle it up and package it up enough so that someone gets to know them and they find the best job match ever in a company culture that fits them, in the work that they do, in the team that they support, because we all spend a lot of time at work.
Right.
And it's important. And I think either whether it's rush or a job, we get so focused sometimes on the wrong thing. We can't see the forest for the trees, right? And we don't listen or hear some really good advice that people who really love us and care about us, or it's their job to help us, are telling us. It's kind of like if you think you're talking too much, you are. And if someone's giving you, if something that people are trying to help you, whether it's the right? Maybe it's the Maybe that's come up multiple times. I can tell that Collier has told you that he has had to do that. But right now you catch yourself, but you have to be open. And if it comes up enough times, it's probably an issue that needs to be addressed. Right.
Right. And that comes along with preparing and listening and trusting that the people that you have put in your corner are in your corner and they know what they're talking about. So that's what I always say at the end of these podcasts. I'm like, I know what I'm talking about, because I do. I don't know what I'm talking about everything, but I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to preparing. And I think the overwhelming thing that you and I are both saying is listen, be open-minded and listen to people who want to help you, and don't try to be something that you're not.
And listen to yourself. Listen to that intuition. If you get a weird feeling somewhere or something strikes you kind of funny, you don't have to stop in the moment, but file it away and revisit it when you have time and figure out what about it made you uncomfortable. And is that a deal breaker? Is it a different sorority that you want? Did that team not feel like a good fit?
Yeah. And that's a good point too. A lot of time, and I was going to get into this, or will get into this in my time out with Trisha today, but a lot of times you will hear that a certain sorority is very good or the best or top tier or whatever it is, which again, that's a whole another topic for another day. But if you get there and you're not comfortable in there, then like you're suggesting, take a moment, think about it. Think about why you felt like that. And if you don't know, then you do need to file that away. And maybe that's not the place for you. And making yourself do a certain thing just because it's what you heard is the best way to do it is a recipe for disaster. You got to listen to yourself and to the people who know you and are giving you truth as they see it. So I think surrounding yourself with people, whether it's your hiring manager or whether it's your rush consultant or your best friends, you got to listen.
Absolutely. Honor it. honor your intuition and what you're hearing. And if just because you grew up thinking, I have to be a software engineer at Microsoft, maybe you want to be in marketing. Maybe a software engineer feels terrible. And if your parents or someone else think you have to go to this college, and if you don't, oh my word, the family legacy, oh my, do what feels right, because no one else is going to have to live it but you.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, that's great advice. And it's all the same. It's all the same advice no matter what. If you have someone in your corner, listen to them and listen to yourself and just be authentically you, because that's the only thing that's going to work. Don't try to be Louis Grizzard and write a book about Rush, because that's not going to work. Not at all. All right. So Bama Rush Talk popularized the hashtag OOTD outfit of the day. For Mad Rush, I'm repurposing hashtag OOTD into observation of the day. So what is Mel's hashtag observation of the day? Go for it.
Today's hashtag observation of the day.
And I'm really surprised that you are stalling for time here, because I mean, just so y'all know, listening, every single person that's on this podcast gets the notes ahead of time, which we have not gone on the notes at all today. So, but this is from the notes, like your hashtag observation of the day. It can be anything serious or not, but you did know about this. You did know you were going to be asked this question.
I did. I know. I was so interested in what we were talking about. I was excited about it. If you have an old snoring dog, make them leave your office before you start a podcast.
There you go. That's perfect.
There you go.
Yeah. But I also know that your dogs are the hashtag most spoiled dogs in the world. Like,
absolutely.
My daughter-in-law's mother's dog, I always call Bailey the hashtag most spoiled dog in the world, but I think your dogs rival that.
I do.
So anyway, thank you for being here. So if you guys, I mean, we're all over the place with advice and whatever, but she does a very great job speaking, helping people understand how to present themselves best when looking for jobs or internships. So where can listeners find you?
On Instagram, I'm at M Hunkapiller. That's always fun.
You got to spell that.
MHUNKA, P as in Peter, ILLER at M.
I hope he's hot.
Yeah, he better be hot, right?
Yeah.
And my email address, which is melhelms68@yahoo.com.
So she went from Helms, which was her maiden name, to Hunkapiller. How about that?
And I used to go by Melanie, but then with a name like Hunkapiller, I had to go to Mel.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just, I don't know if if people listening know this, but my maiden name was Grody, like to the max. So I got a definite upgrade with the addicts as far as growing up in the 80s with the last name Grody. It was not.
But you also won with the monogram. You became PGA. How cool is that?
Oh yeah, yeah, that is cool. That's awesome.
Very, very golfy.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I love you, and I appreciate you spending time with me today.
Thank you. This was fun.
We haven't talked on the phone today, so maybe this will substitute for that daily conversation.
Just tell me to go for a walk, and we can just get it.
Go for it. That is where I cuss. I'm like, go for a freaking walk, but I don't say freaking.
Yeah. MF.
Yeah. Welcome to Time Out with Trisha. Because can you really give advice if you don't speak about yourself in the third person? I don't think so. This is exactly how I speak to my clients. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Now let's get into it. Melanie calls this having a truth sayer. I also describe that as a mirror. So find a friend who can be your mirror, but first do some homework. Okay, the first website is Stitch Fix's Style Guide. offers practical advice about dressing for different body shapes without being overly prescriptive. And Who, What, Where is another one. They provide inclusive style tips and trend guides. Another one is The Concept Wardrobe. They take a systematic approach to analyzing proportions and providing personalized recommendations. Start working on your personal brand now so you can project confidence as you prepare for Rush and beyond. And as we all just heard, working on your personal brand is super important. So take Melanie's tips and go with them because she knows what she's talking about. And that's it for Time Out with Trisha. We'll see you on another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Mad Rush Podcast. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. For additional Rush tips, updates, and more, please follow me on Instagram at Rush with Confidence. If you would like to reach out to us or for more information, please email info@madrushpod.com. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry and Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Trisha Adams.